that as well.
Right.
And I've shared a little bit about how you, the Detroit church, has had a ripple effect on the Ottawa church, perhaps unknown, and how many people's lives that you have actually influenced. This morning, like I said, I shared that text with you guys with this guy who said, "Hey, please thank the Detroit church for me." Let me tell you a story about that guy. When we just got there to Ottawa, we actually, I reached out to him on Facebook and didn't know he was in Ottawa. So hey, I realized he had left the church for about 12 years. And I said, hey, let's grab lunch. We happened to have dinner about 3 weeks later. He said, after we were done, he asked me a question. He says, hey, how are your finances? I said, mine or the church's? And he said, the church's finances. And he said, okay, so how are you guys doing? I said, well, this year we're going to run $30,000 in deficit because, well, we are able to do that because we hadn't had a minister for 2.5 years. And but thanks to some congregations that are helping to support the Ottawa church, we're going to be able to float for a little bit. So I say that to say, he said to me, not being a member, the first time I've got together with him, in a matter of fact, he says, okay, well, I'll take care of that. Wow. And he took care of it right there. And so I said that to say, a few months later, he became part of the congregation. But the ripple effect that you understand, that you don't understand what happens, is absolutely remarkable. Yeah. Now, we, after the group here had said, hey, we're going to renew our commitment to the Ottawa church from a financial vantage point, on a yearly basis, we'll talk about it and so on and so forth. I told Mark last year, I said, we thank you so much. We do not need your finances anymore. We have now, within less than 8 months, have increased our contribution 150%. Wow. And we do not need support from any congregations anymore. We're now become self-support. But it's because you started and planted a seed that actually had a ripple effect. And so one of the things that we want to become there in the Ottawa congregation is that we have 2 significant universities right there in Ottawa, right. Carleton University and University of Ottawa. Yeah. And so what we want to become is a bastion of faith that we connect up with these universities, so that when people come to these colleges, they are going to say, if you want to develop your faith, you need to go to this congregation.
That's right. Amen.
What has happened is truly remarkable, because that is already beginning. There are people who came there on work terms, and then one of the guys, after he left, he says, "Man, I took for granted that the congregation that I became connected with when I was there in Ottawa, and so this is what I'd like to do. I would like for you to train me to be able to teach the gospel to people where I'm at." Specifically, he was in Waterloo, which is just outside of Toronto, just a couple hours east of it. He says, and he says, I want to be able to be trained so that I can spread the gospel wherever I'm at. Wow. I say that to say that you don't realize what you do in the impact that you are going to have on people's lives. I want to share a little bit about that. Melanie's going to share in a couple of minutes how not only are people's lives being reconciled to God, families are being reconciled to God, marriages are being reconciled to God, and we're talking a true impact on what is happening because of your dedication to God. And one of the things that we've got to see different than what the world does is that we've got to have eyes that see. Right. Yep. Eyes that really see what's happening. In other words, so that we're just not living by happenstance, but rather we are living with intentionality. And so because we have been enlightened and what we do, because it has an impact, be it a splash or a ripple effect, it needs to be with intention the way that we live our lives. Well, in order for us to bring that, I want to look at the story quickly in Mark chapter 1.
Come on, bro.
It says this: a man with leprosy came to him, begged him on his knees, "If you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus was indignant. And that was, it's not a wrong translation, but it's, in our day and age, maybe not quite what it tells. It says, but the idea is that Jesus was filled with emotion. Not that he was angry, but he was filled with emotion. And some translation have compassion there, right? And so that Jesus was filled with compassion could be translated. He reached out his hand and touched the man. "I'm willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. Jesus sent him away at once, and with a strong warning, "See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go and show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. So, one of the things that we've got to understand, and what Jesus did, one of the descriptions in the book of Acts that Jesus described as, he says he literally went around doing good, right? That's how he was described. Prayerfully, that's a description of us, right? That Jesus, we went around doing good. That's succinct, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful in its description. But when Jesus healed this man of leprosy, I'm not sure how well acquainted you are of leprosy. Leprosy was a disease where your skin would rot, and it wouldn't smell very well. Okay? And literally, it was so contagious that you had to be ostracized from family, from communities. You were put aside. This disease not only came with a physical ailment, it came with emotional scars. It came with being put aside in society. And as a matter of fact, when you had leprosy and someone was approaching you, it is by law that you needed to say, "Unclean, unclean, don't come near me." When Jesus touched this man with leprosy, he did not merely heal him of his leprosy. There were other things. The emotional scar of being ostracized, of being put aside, the ripple effect of what Jesus did to this man was not merely a splash in that he healed him physically, but that what he did beyond that was quite remarkable. It was beyond that. As a matter of fact, so much so that Jesus, the guy who healed him, told him not to go tell anyone.
I think that's funny.
And what did he do?
He did it anyway.
He went and told everyone.
He was so disobedient.
When you have an impact in someone's life, you can't hold it in.
Right.
Yeah.
It just comes out.
Yeah.
This effect. And you will see the stories over and over and over in the scriptures.
Yeah.
It makes a point. It makes the point that we are going to be able to have this impact on people's lives that are so remarkable that it's outside the margins, if you would. That's what happened here. It's crazy what's happening. It's crazy what's happening. When God made it clear for us to go to Ottawa, I don't have time to tell about all the things, and we'll come back another time. We'll talk about that. But God made it clear for us to move to Ottawa. There's some people that we talked to that said, "Are you crazy? You're 51 years old.
That's what I said.
It's not. You know the best that church is in? I mean, you guys, out of concern, you guys got to get your life set up. You need to be using your life later on, but you got to get set up. I mean, not terrible thoughts, but God made it clear to us. And I say that to say, it's not that I wanted to disobey some people what they said, but when you're overwhelmed with what God is doing in your life,
Yes, bro.
it is insane what happens.
Right.
It's not a mechanical thing. It's not formulaic.
Yeah.
What it is, it's an overflow, and it is clear that this is God.
Yeah.
What people have said to me, Tony, you need to tell what people. I said, I don't know. I cannot draw a line that what's going on in Ottawa is because Tony and Melanie are there. I can't.
Come on, bro.
And I'm not saying that falsely, humbly. I can't. I can tell you my thoughts. I can tell you what we did. But for me to draw that connection,
Right.
it is the epitome of arrogance.
Yep.
It's about God.
Yeah.
And what he's doing. Guys, we've not talked about evangelism once in the church. I'm not sure I've been there a year and 2 months. I've not asked one person to study the Bible. Now, I'm not saying that that's the way you do it.
Right.
I'm trying to help you to understand
That is the Lord.
that it is insane.
Yeah.
I'm presently studying the Bible with 6 guys, and it's always been that way. Sometimes there were 9 or 10. All asked me to study the Bible. You don't understand.
I have no.
This is not me. That's not the way I do things. I say that to say that the ripple effect and the idea of what the impact that we have on people's lives. People will come in our congregations, and they're saying, we don't know there was something like this here. Where have you guys been? We had these 2 ladies, cute little ladies from Red Deer, Alberta. Okay, if you don't know where Red Deer, Alberta is, it's far north, and it's in nowhere, middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Comes to Ottawa, to visit Ottawa. These 70-year-old ladies find us online. She comes in and she says, "Oh my goodness, if I lived here, I will absolutely be a part of this church." And she squeezes my cheeks and she gives me a kiss on my cheeks. And she says, "I can't believe I happened upon this." It's never happened. It's insane. It's because you decide, partially of this, the ripple effect of your desire and your attitude and your spirit to give. When you do these kinds of things, you don't know what's happening.
Right.
We talked to the congregation about having a loving attitude when people come in. You don't know what kind of ripple effect that's going to have on people's lives.
Yeah.
We didn't know when we were talking to Caleb, and Caleb now moves to Waterloo and calls me later and says, "I want to be traded." We didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
You don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's all about God.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Melanie share here for a couple of minutes about one of the girls that she's studying the Bible.
Awesome. So like Tony said, I think when you've been in the ministry, we were in the ministry 25, 23 years, you're trained to do certain things, right? You meet somebody, you dialogue, you get spiritual very quickly. The way God orchestrated us moving from San Antonio to Ottawa was a God story, because we were very set in where we were going. We both had great jobs. We were very financially focused, had a plan. And I was in no way ready to re-enter the ministry. I really loved what I was doing. And so the way that God worked and the way he orchestrated that move, which, and he keeps mentioning what you gave, but I think it can't be reiterated enough, because I think you think of a small amount of money, right? We're always enamored with, they gave millions, or they gave, but you think of a small amount of money and you think, oh, it's just whatever, thousands of dollars. It's not that big a deal. And maybe it wasn't this enormous sacrifice from, the individual's pocketbook, but that's not the point to God.
Amen.
Anything we do in huge to God.
Right.
That's all he needs is a mustard seed. He
Yeah.
doesn't need
Yeah.
grand gestures, right? And
Yeah.
so that small mustard seed of you guys saying, Mark and Ruth saying, well, the Singhs want to go back to Canada, we're going to do what we can do. We're going to do whatever we can do. And you guys being on board with that, God used that faith, that mustard seed faith, to bring us back to our home,
Yeah.
to where we grew up, not Ottawa, but Toronto. And so, it changed our hearts, changed
Yeah.
my heart to re-enter into a time in my life where I thought was kind of past and gone. And so, because God moved that way, when we moved to Ottawa, we were so, enamored is it sounds like a weird word because it sounds so superficial. But when you've been a Christian 30 years, to be enamored with God is an amazing thing, right? And so we were both just so in awe and like, wow, we're back here, we're doing this, we're leading these people. That's how we kind of came in, and we came into a church that was really hurting and very divided. There was a huge rift between the church.
Yeah.
There were two camps of people. And so we came in just very fired up about God. And you know, we didn't come in how we normally would have come in. We've come into a lot of different churches and led. We always had a plan. So we're going to get with these people, then we're going to get with these people, and here's what we're going to do here, and then we're going to start this. And we kind of lay that plan out to the church. But it was kind of like, we're going to talk about God for 6 months, and then we're just going to have dinner with each of you.
Awesome.
What else? No, that's what we're going to do. We're going to just hear your story, and we're going to talk about God. And I feel like the more we talked about God, the more it reminded Tony and I, no, this is God's work. This is God doing. We're fortunate enough to be along for the ride.
Right.
Then that started seeping in, I think, to the church. And so there was a young lady, she grew up in the church, and you know, like most kids that grow up in the church, they know their time is coming as they reach the teen years. Well, she wanted nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with the Bible, God. She would come because her parents dragged her to church. And so when I got there, her mom wanted me to get together with her. So I was like, sure. So we get together, and I kid you not, it was folded arms, it was scowling face, it was like, you know, what do you want? Like, so, you know, how are you doing? Tell me about yourself, blah, 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 blah. It was yes and no answers. And then she looks at me and she says two things. She says, I don't like people. And I was like, okay. that's
Same
great.
thing Mark said to me
And then she
2
said,
days ago.
then she said, I don't know, I like you.
Oh,
For now. And I was like, all right, I'll take for now. And then she said, why are you getting with me? So the old me, who always had a plan and knew what I was supposed to be doing with every person I met, would have said, well, you know what, my goal is to help you know Jesus. Because I would have felt that's the most honest answer to tell this person. But I feel like with God shifting how I feel and how I think and moving me out of the way and saying, it's not you, Melanie, it's me. That small shift, I just was like, honestly, I just want to get to know you. I said, I know just because I've been a Christian a long time, I've helped a lot of women. I know that me getting together with you, I have some things I can help you with, I can teach you, you know. But I said, other than that, I don't know. She's like, so you don't want me to be a Christian? And I was like, oh, I definitely want you to be a Christian. I want every person in the world to be a Christian. But whether I'm the one that's going to be used by God to do that, I don't know. But I do know God wants me to use me to do something, and I know I have a lot to give, so let's see what happens. And so we would just talk. She wanted nothing to do with the Bible. We would just get together and talk, and then out of the blue, literally this is what her parents said. She came up to them one day and she said, I'm ready.
How long later?
A couple months later, she said to her parents, I'm ready. And they were like, ready for what? Right? And she said, I'm ready to become a Christian. And she came up to me that Sunday in church, like already repentant, already different. And she was like, can you study the Bible with me? I want to become a Christian. And to tell you how different this girl is, we are just about to do the church study, the cross study with her. To tell you how different her demeanor is, people don't even know, she's a very private person, so she hasn't wanted us to kind of broadcast that she's studying. And people are like, what is going on with Christina? Because she comes early with her parents. She sets up the chairs for church on Sunday. Wow. She smiles. It is a God story. Because we haven't even done a Bible study, and she's doing all these things. But I wanted to share it from that vantage point, because I do think sometimes we get caught up in the program. And programs are awesome. We need structure. We need calendars. But sometimes we get caught up in the Bible study series or the things we've been trained to do, and we rely on those things as the things that will convert that person. Yeah. So we go in thinking we know what God's going to do. We know where this is going to go. We know how it's. And the truth is, we really don't.
Right.
And so sometimes we'll study the Bible with people and they don't make it, and they leave feeling unloved by us. Right. Because our goal wasn't to love that person. It was to teach them the Bible studies, to convert them. And when they don't want it, then we're mad, we're disappointed. And instead, if we love that person, even if they walk away, what they'll never forget is that we love them the way Jesus called us to love people. And so I'm excited about this journey. I don't know what God's going to do. I mean, it's funny because when you have a limited amount of time, you want to share all these crazy things, because in communicating them, you're not lifting yourself up. You're saying only God could do what is happening. Only He could make happen what is happening, because it's not even physically possible for a church of 60 people to now be in the 90s. Right. We were all broken people. There's no way we could have all studied. We would have had to drop our lives, right? To do what God did through us in a short period of time. So thank you again for your small step of faith. Maybe you didn't even know what you were doing, but we wouldn't have been in Ottawa. God would not have used that story to see the countless people, and I really believe countless more who are coming to know Him. So.
And so what we're not here to talk about, like I talked about this morning, is to codify God. That this is how we lead our Bible talk. We don't. If you hear, well, we shouldn't ask people to study the Bible, you heard the wrong thing.
Right.
If you hear that this is what needs to, no, I want you to hear, this is God. This is what we're all about. This is, if it means sitting at Subway, that's what it means. It's that this is a God story that I get to be a part of.
Amen.
I remember one of my mantras in the fellowship was that, if not you, then who?
Right.
You know what it is now? No longer. If not you, then God's going to use somebody else.
Yep. That's right.
I get to be a part of this. As a brother, what's your name that prayed? John said, God is partnering with us? That's awesome. We get to be a part of this. It's absolutely phenomenal. And so, anyways, that's the idea. You don't know what's going on all the time. You can't see the end, and it's okay. Trust the story. Trust the story. What God is going to do in the city. What God is going to use you to do. And ultimately, I'll close with this thought. You know what He said to Abraham? And remember, it's a God story, right? It's not an Abraham story. I will bless the nation through you. You. Okay. You. Yes. You. In that workplace.
Come on.
In that neighborhood.
Yes.
in that classroom, in that family. When we put a vision before the church, I don't know what God's going to do. We said, if this year in 2020, you can have an impact on one person, and that was not code to convert someone. I'm talking about maybe someone in that family has a secret that they haven't shared with anyone, and you're the person that God used to unlock that. Maybe there's somebody who literally needs some help, that you can have an impact. And because we are there and God's handyman to do good works, we live with intentionality.
Yeah.
We live with intention. Come on. Not wandering aimlessly.
Right.
That we live with intention. My time is coming to an end.
Right.
I don't know how many more years I've got. I want to make it count.
Right.
I want to be a part of a good legacy. And so I'm not going to wander aimlessly. I don't want to do that. It's that stage in my life where my kids, my friends, parents are dying, and their children are getting married. That's where I'm at. In the last few months, a number of my friends' parents, Mark's parent, just recently, but it's happening all the time. My other buddy's parent, it's happening. They're dying.
Right.
It makes you think about your mortality.
Yep. Right.
And the question is, how are you living your life? And do you realize the ripple effect that it can have? I just shared with you, I literally could tell 20 more stories.
Yeah.
I did not exhaust my story. And I get to be in the front row watching the Red Wings play. Sorry, watching what God is doing. So hopefully, guys, that we have eyes that see what's happening in our lives, and whatever you want to ask. What are we doing next?
Yeah, the Q&A here. I just wanted to mention three things real quickly before we go open up for Q&A. One, the money that we collected in our special missions, when Ottawa was being sent out, the core group discussed whether we could send Ottawa money, and so we did. And so that's what they're referring to when we talk about our support, that the special missions that each and every one of us gave. So sometimes we don't always see the connection between our giving to the impact that we're having. And so part of that was the core group decided to give some of that money to Ottawa churches as we're kind of helping support some of the work in Canada. So just so you know, so if you gave special missions, you helped support the work in Ottawa.
Absolutely.
Two, I was going to mention, so in last year, 2019, the Detroit church, we had started at 240, we had 21 baptisms. Now, we're excited about that. Of the people that were obviously, Mike and Taylor were a part of that, Juan and Catherine who did the welcome part of that. So 21, we are a church of 240. The church in Ottawa has 60 people. They had 27 baptisms.
Wow.
And what I want us to see is that I really believe the condition of our groups, that it's all God, but God works through worship.
Yeah.
He works through people that have great faith. He works through people, and so I believe that the future of the singles ministry, or the reach ministry, and the campus ministry, and the marriage group, the marriage zones, the Bible talks that we have, and so that's where I wanted to glean some of of God using them. And like they said, we know it's all God, but God uses decisions that people make, and so I just kind of wanted to help you guys understand, get a clearer picture of what God's doing in Ottawa, and just to give you some perspective. To put perspective into it, if we had as many baptisms per capita in Detroit, so if every group of 60 did what's happening in Ottawa, we would have 108 baptisms last year.
Yep.
Just to give you a perspective. That's how many people that we would add that probably Vista Tech wouldn't even be big enough for us. So I'd love to have some Q&A or comments. If you guys could just marinate in what you feel like maybe God's speaking to, or just go ahead.
Great job, brother. I am totally encouraged and convicted just by your lesson. And one of the things that I really got out of it, just really impacted me, is how you said how your congregation. I kind of wrote it and put it into a question. to apply here, but it says, is your congregation a place where people can grow and develop their faith? And that really inspired me and challenged me at the same time. And it's like, okay, man, you know, when I come to church, am I a giver or am I a taker? Do I just come to get the fellowship and yeah, I'm good, etc. But man, am I really bringing something to the pot to help people to grow in their faith when visitors and family members are coming out? Am I making their experience pleasant when it's like, man, you know, wow, I had a great talk with this guy. This guy's really helped me to really see some things I hadn't seen before. And even taking it on a personal level is that, you know, when people interact with me, you know, can I help them develop their faith? So I really appreciate the outside perspective and just the great news and even the challenges, even though they weren't thrown out as a challenge, but it was really great. It didn't fall on deaf ears. Thank you.
Well, let me share. I don't know if all you guys know. You know, when Melanie and I, we have served in a few capacities in the fellowship. We've led churches of 2,500, and this is the smallest group, the church that we've been a part of. And I'm telling you, it was exciting. I remember in the Toronto church at times we had a staff of 60 and that we were leading, or the Chicago church when we had a staff of close to 100. And going to a small church of literally, we guessed it was 60. We didn't know how many there were. It was more like in the 50s. But the point remains that what was absolutely refreshing is going back to grassroots ministry.
That's right. Yeah.
And what I mean by grassroots ministry, I'm talking grassroots.
Yeah.
Melanie and I came when we were setting up the chairs.
Yeah.
I come in here and I see this lovely place. I mean, and you have the screen at all angles, so you can turn around and sing and look at that way. You don't have to look at the front, you know. And it's like, wow, this is phenomenal.
Right.
But one of the things about the grassroots ministry, what it did, Melanie we would set up coffee. She would bring it up and set up the coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
And we will set up the baptistry when there's baptism. And we got it was grassroots again. Now, when literally there are times when I used to speak at conferences, people are putting makeup on me. That happened in the Chicago conference in 1996. Okay, for the lighting and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but the point is, to going from that, and I'm not saying inherently there's an issue with having a well-organized. I'm saying there are times when we forget.
Right.
And what can happen is that we become spoon-fed.
Yeah.
And we waltz in at 10 o'clock when service is starting, and we are oblivious to what happened an hour earlier.
Yeah. That's right.
And we are not actually a part of this family of what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we need to talk. And so initially, you know, when I was telling them people are doing this, I mean, you guys are church leaders, where are you doing this? No, we want to go back to grassroots level. And that's one of the attractions. It was not a negative. That's one of the attractions for me to go back to doing this. And I said it to say, what we tried to communicate with the church, I said, when you came and set up that mic, when you came and put that chair in place, you were affecting people's souls. It wasn't about being organized. It was about this ripple effect. And so that's what we're talking about. And so what we try to infuse into people, you know why you're doing, you know why you come to church and you smile? You know why you come to church and you give? It's not so that we can look like this clean society.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We who have eyes see.
Yeah.
That's right.
We who understand these kinds of things. And it was really riveting. And I don't ever want to lose grassroots ministry.
Yeah.
And I'm all for growing our churches. But I am not for looking so pretty
Right.
Right.
and looking so nice that we forget that this is not a show.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's not a show.
Right.
Yeah.
but there's a reason why you know why we practice with our choirs? Not so that we can sound good. It's so that we can affect people's lives.
Right. That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
You know why we set up the communion? We come in and we do it. We want to do it well. And so what we try to do is to understand there is a reason why we're doing all that we're doing.
Yep.
And sometimes in order to get to the end, we skip to that.
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie and going, oh, how did this end? And not enjoying all the emotions that happens in that movie that takes you on this ride. And it's like, why even watch the movie?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what sometimes we try to do. And what you said there was really important for us to, and so this grassroots level.
Yeah.
And so while we're growing here, I just don't ever want us to forget what we're trying to do. So,
Amen.
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 Yes,
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah, this is just overload.
That was my intention.
Well,
I'm kidding, of course.
from this morning, when you just elaborate on Abraham, how there was no strategy. You know, Abraham had, I'm just going to follow you, God.
Yeah.
And for God and Abraham to have that relationship where you talk about, you shared the scripture in James, that they were friends. I mean, Abraham was God's friend, or however the scripture put it, they're friends.
Yeah.
It's like, take the strategy, take the methodology, just let it be you and God, and do what you know you're supposed to do. Very encouraged by what you shared. What you're used to doing is saying, I'm here to help you become close to Jesus.
Yeah.
Opposed to saying, I'm here to be your friend. I'm here to love you as who you are. Saying that you haven't even brought up the word evangelism. And God is just moving in that church with you guys. It's the spirit of it. It's like God is just the total focal point, and people are coming, dropping their wits, their hearts. Hey, I've been looking for this. And people aren't like focused on, reach out. Yeah, we should. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's just that walk with God, being real. And then you shared about Abraham's faults. He gave his wife up because he was afraid and he was fearful. And yet, the relationship between him and God, God helped him work through it. Sarah laughing and feeling like it's a joke that I can actually have a child at 90. And God said, I can do this. And they actually had the faith in God to overcome that and actually have a child. And he didn't go into the fact that he was told to sacrifice him. But it's just real. It's just so real and true, and a true connection between God and Abraham, and the connection that God wants to have between us.
Yeah.
It's like, put yourself out of the way and let God take it away.
And you know, and you know, sometimes in our fellowship, we are reactionary. And when I say that to say, when we started out many years ago, we were afraid to show emotions because we did not want to be like the Pentecostals, because we thought it was fake, and we thought and then we were to the point where we were stoic. I don't know when you became a disciple, right? But at one time we had no music in the congregation. We sang a cappella, and it was, from that vantage point, it was not as emotion filled. We sometimes become reactionary. We hear something and we say, oh, that's what we need to do. This is a God story. Can you imagine? I'm planning on talking about evangelism this year. It's part of God's story.
Right.
Okay, let me make that really, really clear. I've never talked about contribution. One time in the congregation, we increased the contribution, the people increased the contribution by 150%. That does not say, I'm not going to talk about money.
Right.
Right.
All I'm trying to say, can you imagine when we actually start doing some of this stuff, and God's
Yeah.
reminding us, remember where you started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember where
Yeah.
you started. And that's why we have a family group, and we are having it well planned. Why? Because when God blesses that, that's why we're doing it. That's why it's well planned. That's why we're sharing our faith.
Right.
That's what we're talking about this. And so this idea is, I want us to see God's not done with us.
Yeah.
Nope.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. Because I tell you, I wondered. I wondered about me. Is it 25 years in the ministry and then I'm going to sit at the back?
Wow.
Come on.
Come on.
Having been, quote unquote, the leader of the entire nation in Canada, and now what am I going to do? Am I done? Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close with you.
Yeah.
I don't care what you got planned in your group. Not even close. Yes, you're going to say something. Then Ruth. Sorry, Ruth.
I kind of decided that I was maybe something.
See, I'm going to call you out, sister. I'm going to call you out right now.
Come on, Ronell.
So, not that I didn't I am totally grateful for everything that you shared, but what your wife shared really.
People, honestly, now, before you go any further, I go and visit a congregation and people say the cursory hello and then ask me how is Melanie doing. I have people too, you know.
I'm totally used to that. Mr. Kane does that all the time. So, that really stood out to me, what you shared, Melanie. Thank you, because I can remember, as a matter of fact, it was the Smith's daughter. I remember having that same encounter with her where she's like, okay, so what do you, when I became a part of her studies, because she had studied a few times. And when her and I met, she said, so what's so different about you?
Right.
And I said, well, with my past, nothing much.
Yeah.
It's just I wanted to get to know you, and I wanted to be a part of this new plan for you. And so she did get baptized, and it was over the top emotional for me. But we're also, the point that I want to make, because I will lose my point, is that being a part of his story and moving out of the way of the formalities and the routines, if it were not for my husband, that's exactly how I would live, because that's what I'm used to. And being a professional and management, you always gotta. So being with this guy who's all over the place most of the time, but always. He is always focused spiritually. He's always focused on what's most important, and that's God. And talk about barriers, and just, he does not accept the barriers. If anything could have happened to this guy, most of which you all know, and some you don't know, because he is consistent. And so whenever there is an opportunity to study with someone, I'll always say, well, what group is that person in? I mean, it's because we want to make sure. Now, I'm all for making sure they're connected with the right person, but my husband's always like, that doesn't have anything to do with it, honey. If you're available, if your schedule's not full, you need to be a part of that. And so we're studying with a young woman now, Carolyn, myself, and a couple other sisters from the Reach. And initially, well, she's single, so she's going to be a part of the Reach. And so I initially, passed her along and said, hey, this is what, but I had an opportunity to spend time with her, and I shared all of that with Carolyn so that she would be taken care of and she would be understood. But I removed myself from the study, and I was very convicted, again, discipled again about it, my heart about it. And I called Carolyn and I said, Carolyn, I need to be involved, with Tia, because I just feel a connection there, and I am just excited to see the miracle in her life because of what she's facing. And so I share that as well to say that we have so many, as a church, there's so many people that we're all involved with.
Yeah.
And I definitely can relate to people leaving and not feeling loved. If we do remove ourselves, because we're not awesome, we're not great. If we just remove ourselves and let God
Yeah.
do his work through us and focus on us being a part of his plan,
Yeah.
no matter what group we're in, what demographic area we're in, or in leadership, it just doesn't matter in that right,
Yeah.
Yes.
then we, we would be blessed beyond measure.
Yeah.
So that's just all I want to share.
Amen.
I think, Ruth is like, don't ever get confused between being efficient and understanding how effective God is
Yeah.
in what
Yeah.
He's doing. And
Yes.
one's not without the other. Like I said, we are absolutely people who at times are impulsive and reactionary towards
Yeah.
towards some things. But I think it's important if at the end of this weekend you heard, trust the story, God is wonderful, God is powerful, He's not given up on us. If that's what you heard, then you heard the right things. But if you heard lawlessness, no planning, that's what Tony said, you didn't hear what I'm talking about, okay? And so the whole idea we want to say, wow,
Yeah.
in spite of us,
Yeah.
God worked.
Amen.
Right? And I think it's really important. Ruth.
So, thank you for your lives. You guys are awesome. I adore you always.
You know, it's why I came in so that you could say that.
So obviously the overarching theme that I hear is that God is everywhere. I think of the act that the Detroit church gave. I am reminded of the 2 small fishes
Yeah.
with a few loaves of bread, and
That's
it
right.
spread to 5,000 people. And I feel like that's what's happening in Ottawa. We had a little portion of it,
Yeah.
and God says, I will use it. So thank you to the church here. Practically, obviously, every one of us are in different positions in our faith here in
Yeah.
this circle alone. So I'm curious, for some of us that are not doing so well in our leadership faith, what can you advise us so that we can take this home and say, okay, as a leader, how will I make this transition or shift that you both have shared from where you were in San Antonio, now your faith is in a different position? Practically, is there anything you can help us with?
You know, I can only tell you what my journey is, right?
Yeah.
For the longest time in my life, and it's the journey I'm on,
Yeah.
I knew everything and I told people how to do it because I'm great. I wouldn't say those words, but in retrospect, that's what happens with
Right.
us. What has happened and God has stripped me of, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And so for us to look at it and we think, wow, I'm not doing, it's, what does God have to do to you to tell you it's not about you?
Right.
And when you've got that figured out, and then you put your plans to that concept, can you imagine what's
Yeah.
going to happen? So let me share one story in that context. There's one of the guys who had been coming to the church, like I was sharing with, did not grow up with a Christian background. And so he came up to me 5 weeks ago and he says, Tony, here I'm struggling with my emotions. I have some anger issues. And I want you to study the Bible with me to help me. Last Thursday, we got to the point where I said to him, and I feel that he could hear it, I said, that was brought up not so that I can help you with your anger issue, is so that you can see your need for God. This is a bigger deal than just your anger issue. He didn't believe in Jesus. At the first time we sat down, I said to him, who do you say Jesus is? And I said, you are going to have this confession in a few weeks from now in that same chair that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. He's about to say that. I gave him a vision, but what's my point of what I'm talking about is that this idea of what we're struggling in our leadership is not that we need to learn some concepts. It's to learn the big concept.
Yeah.
That these are pointing us to our inadequacies, not so that we can have low esteem of ourselves, but the elevation of what God is doing.
Yeah.
And so if you're not, I'm saying it over and over and over and over again in different ways,
Yeah.
that this is pointing you that this is a God thing. And I am so, so incredibly proud of what this church has gone through, because I was here when it was perhaps in its darkest moment. I don't want to do a comparative thing, okay? That's not my point here, because some of you may argue there other times.
Yeah.
But to see what you are today,
Yeah.
and to see what vision that God has for you to understand the best
Yeah.
is yet to come. Really, that's not a punchline.
Right.
That's who God
Right.
says. Can you imagine? No one thought that within 8 months we would outgrow our facilities where we are.
Yeah.
We've outgrown it. We can't fit in it. Can you imagine when soon we can outgrow this?
Yeah.
Oh, Tony, don't you see how many empty seats? Oh, no. When God opens the gates, when God reigns, you better bring a big umbrella.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I play on words there? That was pretty cool. If I don't say so myself. But obviously, I think it's really, really important that we dig and we find what is it I need to learn. What is it specifically but maybe it's pointing us in a direction that we are closing that door to. And I think it's very, very important that we understand that. Somebody had to,
I just
yes.
want to share
Yeah,
one
sorry, babe.
thing
And
in
then, what's your name, bro?
relation to
Doug, then Doug.
that. So, obviously when as we were transitioning in the church, we taught things like first principles classes for people who didn't know, the sort of first stages of Christianity. We taught people how to study the Bible with people. So there were like things that we were teaching the church to do. But I want to give you an example about how we can get caught up in the details. So we had done this first principles class, and people had come to get kind of a refresher for some, but then for some to learn how to study the Bible with people. At the same time saying, guys, this is a tool. The study series is a tool.
Yeah.
It's not meant for us to be imprisoned by it. It's a tool.
Yeah.
We don't know our way around the Bible. It helps us guide a soul toward Jesus.
Right.
But don't get caught up. So continuing that message, trying to keep people's minds on the fact that it's God who converts a soul. So I'm in the fellowship, and this sister comes up to me, and she's super mad, and she's a very strong personality, and she's like, I don't know what to do with this sister. And I said, okay, tell me what's going on. And she's like, we're studying the Bible with this girl, and I'm leading the Bible studies. I've been leading them since the beginning of the study, and I think this girl needs to do this Bible study, and she doesn't think we need to do it. And like, we were going back and forth in the Bible study, and I was like, while you're in the study? And she's like, yes. And I said, okay, so what's the problem? And she's like, we can't agree on this Bible study. And I said, so let me ask you a question. If you didn't do this Bible study, could she still become a Christian? She was like, yeah, but it's such an important study. And I'm like, could she still find Jesus? Yes. If you did that Bible study, would she still find Jesus? Yes. I go, do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? It's not the Bible study
Right.
series. It's you guys.
Yep.
You guys are the problem. You are hindering a soul because you think you know better. Who cares? Both of you are right.
Right. Makes sense.
Now, if you didn't want to do salvation and you're teaching her how to, okay, then I'd be like, no, you need to help her know how to use it. But what you're talking about is it's supplemental. It's Can she learn that after she becomes a Christian? Yes. But you're arguing in front of a soul because you think you know better. That's what I mean by getting caught in the weeds. Like, we all need to learn, we need to grow, we need to be trained, we need to do all those things. But sometimes our pride and our gets so involved in the process that we lose sight of what's actually important. What's really important is the soul that God has graciously given us to guide, and we're hindering because we are arguing about silly things. And the same thing with, in the church at the time, there was this huge divide, and people were like, aren't you going to get with these couples? Aren't you going to do that? And I was like, we were like, let's just focus on God for a bit. Those problems will be there. They will be there. Let's focus on God. And the crazy thing about it is, the more we talked about just let's find joy, let's find faith, let's find hope in God, those situations resolved themselves. Many of them did. Like one of these sisters, who is, again, a very strong personality, she was actually the person who came up to me and said, Melanie, I don't need you to get together with us. Her and I are getting together. We're going to be okay. Well, that's just prayer. Because Tony can't do, you can't do anything that God hasn't initiated to do. You can't move a soul, you can't change a heart unless you have solicited the power of God to change it. Sometimes I think we persuade people by our words and move people, but truly that change and that experience, it's God orchestrated and God moved. We're just supposed to be the ones that go, God, where are you moving? Okay, let me step into that path so I can move where you're moving, instead of going, God, can you please get over here? I'm moving here. Can you work where I'm working? So anyways.
Wow. I know we got to be done at 1:30, so Doug, you're the last one, and then
All
we're
right, great. Make it quick.
Yeah.
Quick thank you for coming again, because you and I and the leadership met back in the dark days. And I tried to forget about that.
Yes.
You brought it up. So. But anyways, thank you. Thank you for your message. Thank you for your example.
Yeah.
Because your example, actions speak louder than words. You said, hey, there's a need. God says, go to Ottawa. I won't say Ottawa, it's Ottawa. And you took a humble route, and you went to the grassroots and so on. It makes me think about Philippians 2, guys, where Jesus said, it says that he made himself nothing, right? And I believe it's because of that kind of heart and attitude that we see, like you talked about, that Jesus went around and did good. He made himself nothing. See, he wasn't feeling like he needed to be somebody because he already knew he was part of the family. And that's with us. We're already sons and daughters of God.
That's right.
Why are we trying to be somebody? Just make ourselves nothing like Jesus. And let him lead. So thank you.
Amen.
I'll close with this, and then Mark's going to come out. Let me say this. Like I said, I hope what God has used us to do here today is to elevate your faith. These guys are expert builders, well planned. I would really, when we have that combination, it is going to be incredible what God is going to do and has been doing and will continue to do with the Detroit church. Let me just say this. You're already having a ripple effect on a nation other than this. Thank you. May God bless your faith. As you make that decision, go. You may not know where he's taking you. And you might have some stumbles on your way as Abraham did. But you're ultimately going to get to the point where you can say, sacrifice him? Okay. Because I reason you can raise him from the dead. I'm not there. I will freely confess. But you know what? I trust the story. I trust the story. Thank you.
Amen.
Andrew, can you pray for us? Andrew Elliott, can you pray for us?
God, thank you for this time together. Is the people that you've chosen to lead your people, God. I pray that we can honor you with that calling,
Please,
God. God, thank you for the Singhs coming into town this week, God. God, I pray that we can, trust the story as He has said, and that we can pursue you, God. Live up to what you've called us to, God, and that we can please you as we try to lead people closer to you. We love you, and in Jesus' name, pray. Amen.
All right, well done. Thank you, guys.